Hello student, a very warm good morning to all of you. This will be the next video of Roman Empire. The condition of the workers. Controlling of workers. Slavery was an institution deeply rooted in the ancient world, both in the Mediterranean and in the Near East. And not even Christianity, when it emerged and triumphed as the state religion in the 4th century, seriously challenged this institution. It does not follow that the bulk of the labor in the Roman economy was performed by slaves. That means the Roman economy was dependent on the slavery. That many have been true or large part of Italy in the Republican period under Augustus. There were still 3 million slaves in a total Italian population of 7.5 million. But it was no longer true of the empire as a whole. Slavery were an investment, and at least one Roman agriculture writer advised landowner against using them in contexts where too many might be required or where their health could be damaged, for example by malaria. These considerations were not based on any sympathy for the slaves but on hard economic calculation. On the other hand, if the Roman upper classes were often brutal toward their slaves, ordinary people did had sometimes shows much more compassion. One historian says about a famous incident that occurred in the region of Nero. As warfare became less widespread with the establishment of peace in the 1st century, the supply of slaves tended to decline, and the uses of slave labor thus had to turn either to slave breeding or to cheaper substitutes such as wage labor, which was more easily dispensable. In fact, free labor was extensively used on public work at Rome, precisely because an extensive use of slave labor would have been too expensive. Unlike hired workers, slaves had to be fed and maintained throughout the year, which increased the cost of holding this kind of labor. This is probably why slaves are not widely found in the agriculture of the later period, at least not in the eastern provinces. On the other hand, they and freedman, that is, slave who had been set free by their masters, were extensively used or as business manager. Where obviously they were not required in large number. Masters often gave their slaves or freedom capital to run business on their behalf or even businesses of their own. The Roman agriculture writers paid a great deal of attention to the management of labor. Columella, a first century writer who came from the south of Spain, recommended that landowners should keep a reserve stock of implements and tools, twice as many as they needed, so that production could be continuous. For the loss in slave labor, time exceeded the cost of such items. There was a general perceptions among employers that without supervision no work would ever get done. So supervision was paramount for both free workers and slaves. To make supervision easier, workers were sometimes grouped into the gangs or smaller teams. Columella recommended squad of 10, claiming it was easier to tell who was putting in effort and who was not in work group of this size. This shows a detailed consideration of the management of labor. Pliny the Elder, the author of a very famous natural history, condemned the use of slave gang as the worst method of organizing production, mainly because slaves who worked in gang were usually chained together by their feet.